मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कार चित्तानि नाहम् न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो मदोर्नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं च सङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेया चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहम्
Because we are officially announcing the launch of the longevity experiment, and it starts January 1. If anyone wants to be a participant of this longevity experiment, and right now I'm speaking to the entire world, we have people online from Europe, from Latin America, from Russia, from you name it, India. And so to all of you who are online right now, and to everyone in this room, if you want to be a participant of the longevity experiment, please send an email to longevity@choprafoundation.org. Once again, please send an email that you want to be part of it. Most of it will be free. So please join the experiment if you want to. And there will be some elements that will involve webinars and discussions, which obviously there's a cost, and we have a cost to do the experiment as well, including the research. But please join, and there's no charge to be part of the experiment unless you want to go into the advanced courses, etc. Once again, longevity@choprafoundation.org. Very grateful to Dilip here for having taken on the responsibility for the technology aspect, and of course, Punacha, the CEO of Chopra Foundation, for supporting this vision and actually with Dilip executing it as well. So why the longevity experiment? Why are we doing it? For several reasons. One is something very practical. People are living now longer than they've ever lived before. In the Roman Empire, the average age of a human being was 28 years. The average age of a human being in the United States in the last century was something like 58 or something. Today, the average age for males is almost 80, and for women, even more. I'm talking about the average age. And the fastest growing segment of the American population at the moment is over the age of 90. The fastest rate of growth is over the age of 90. This is good news, but it's also not good news, because as people grow older, we start to understand the difference between what is called health span and lifespan. So lifespan is how long you live, and health span is how long will you be healthy before you die. And there's a big difference between health span and lifespan right now. And unfortunately, 90% of medical resources today are spent in the last few years of life. 90% medical resource economically. Moreover, as people get old and they get age-related diseases like Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cancer, frequent infections, then as that that happens, older people are seen as a burden to society. And it's a shame because, one day all of us are going to get old. So if you think they're a burden, you will be a burden at some point. And there's a lot of very interesting demographics on this. If you believe that to get old is actually to have the wisdom of experience and the biology of youth, that would be an amazing combination, right? The wisdom of experience and the biology of youth. That would be an amazing combination. And then the older people would be the ones who become the caretakers of our society instead of the younger people thinking they're a burden. There's already a lot of research on that, by the way. Dr. Alexander Leaf, who was professor at Mass General in the 70s at Harvard Medical School, he traveled around the world. And of course, you have blue zones and other similar experiments. But Dr. Leaf, as he traveled around the world and looked at people or societies where people live to a very ripe old age in good health, in really good health, he found something very interesting. He said, and by the way, he identified these people long before blue zones or any of this. And what he found, certain parts of Afghanistan, the Hindu Kush Mountains, the Tarahumara Indians, where they run marathons even at old ages, different parts of Iran, some of the Greek islands. What he found was that there was a different mindset. In fact, there was a problem for him to do his research, because when he asked people how old they were, they would exaggerate their age, because in these societies, to be old was to be glamorous. So, he had to check, and on many of these places, you don't have birth certificates or anything. But people wanted to be seen as older and healthier. And that changed the entire way these people aged. And so all these areas I mentioned just now, centenarians, riding horses, running, etc., very unusual, but very few places like that in the world. So when scientists today talk about aging, they talk about biological age. Biological age is if you study my biomarkers. And in the past, the biomarkers were things like blood pressure, which still are, blood pressure, bone density, absence of osteoporosis, muscle mass, the strength of muscles, sugar tolerance, inflammatory markers, skin thickness, amount of wrinkles. This was all part of standard biological age measurement. Fat content, aerobic capacity, all of that. Dr. Ara is here. He's a sports medicine specialist. He understands these are standard biomarkers. But now we're going even beyond that. We can measure telomerase, the enzyme that controls the length of telomeres. We can actually measure telomere length, which is probably the best marker of genetic viability and longevity. And right now, there's something that scientists talk about that is called the Hayflick limit, named after a scientist called Hayflick, where a cell can only replicate so many times and then it doesn't. And that Hayflick limit at the moment suggests that you can extend life to 120, okay, according to the Hayflick limit at the moment. But science advances, everything changes after a while. So I don't believe even in the Hayflick limit, but the longevity experiment is for those who aspire to live up to 100. And then I'm not saying that they will, but they aspire to live to 100. You always stretch more than you can reach. What's a dream for? But those who aspire to live to the age of 100 or more, and those who also aspire not to die of an illness, to die in what our holy tradition says, Mahasamadhi, the big meditation. So you come, you say goodbye to everyone, you have a nice party, and then you go into meditation, and that's a very elegant exit. And that should be the exit strategy for life, not for business. But, business, everybody's trying to get the best deal. But for life, the exit strategy should be that. I live healthy right to the end. And when I can say to myself, been there, done that, I celebrate and I exit in style. Okay, so that's the goal of the longevity experiment. Now, having said this, and I've given you reasons why we need to do this, to improve the burden on society as it is now, to improve the quality of healthcare because it's dismal at the moment, and to not see old people as a burden but as a gift to society. That's one reason for doing it. But I have a deeper reason, to be honest, for doing it. I want to do this experiment to show you and convince myself, not that I need any more convincing. I was a student of Mahesh Yogi, and I got convinced a long time ago. But to convince you that consciousness or awareness, or if you want to use religious terms, your soul, your spirit, which is part of a universal spirit that sometimes people call God, but we don't have to use those terms. God is not fashionable these days, so you can say acausal, non-local, quantum mechanical interrelatedness. Doesn't matter what the term is. But this experiment is to show you that your soul, or what these days cognitive scientists call conscious agent. That's, by the way, the current terminology for soul. Conscious agent. You are a conscious agent having a human experience right now. So what we want to show is that your conscious agent, your soul, is not in time, that it is immortal, that it is timeless, and that it is infinite possibilities, because it's infinite. Anything that's infinite can manifest infinite possibilities. Now, in the tradition that we come from, Adi Shankara, the infinite is invisible. Okay. If it was visible, it wouldn't be infinite, because everything that's visible has a boundary, right? So you say the Milky Way galaxy or the current universe we're in. And by the way, they're saying now that there are 2 trillion galaxies just in our own universe, and there are infinite universes. But imagine 2 trillion galaxies, 706 trillion stars, uncountable, probably habitable planets, according to the Goldilocks zone, 60 billion habitable planets in just the Milky Way galaxy. So we are not even a grain of sand in infinite lokas. Infinite lokas. Not even a grain of sand in all the beaches of the universe, but what the Vedanta said, there are infinite yoga vashishta. In the vast expanse of consciousness, infinite universes are born and die like motes of dust in a beam of light shining through a hole in the roof. It's a beautiful metaphor. Think of a beam of light shining through a hole in the roof, and in the beam of light, infinite universes are being born. Infinite universes come and go in the vast expanse of consciousness, he says. Okay? So when we played this hymn, every few verses, there was one verse, Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shivoham. Chida, in this case, means consciousness, Chit. Chidananda, bliss consciousness. So he says, Chidananda Rupa, my only form, symbolically, is Shiva. Okay? Shiva is a symbol of infinite, formless being, which you are. Okay? And Shiva has 5 faces, just so you know, symbolically. The face of creation, then maintenance, which usually we call Vishnu, but it's the face of Shiva, then destruction, and then incubation, and then resurrection. So evolution is like a spiral. It repeats itself, but it also moves to higher dimensions. Chidananda Rupam, I am the symbolic representation of infinite bliss, symbolically before you as Shiva. So when you look at Shiva's statue, you might want to look at it. There's a lot of symbolic representation there. But that's not Shiva. Shiva is formless. And so are you. That's what he's saying. We are all formless. Either you can say dimensionless or infinite dimensions. I'm that. And you are that. And all this is that. Tattvamasi. Sat Chitananda. Truth. Sat means truth of existence. Chit, pure consciousness. Ananda, infinite bliss. So if I can get there, then there's nothing to worry about. And when we look at the religious experience of all traditions, not, of course, we are biased towards the Eastern wisdom traditions of Vedanta and Kashmir Shaivism and Buddhism and Zen, but look at the other wisdom traditions, Christianity, Gnostic Gospels, you'll find the same thing, okay? So you will not find any deviation from the fundamental understanding of truth. And what is that religious experience? It's only three things. Finding your true self, which is beyond space and time, eternal. Number one. As a result of that, the spontaneous emergence of what we call grace, if you want to call it that. But when you have grace, there's the spontaneous emergence of what we call Platonic values, named after Plato, because Plato was the first idealist in the West, as far as you know, along with great luminaries at that time, Pythagoras and Parmenides and Hermes Megistus and amazing people, a few luminaries that basically gave birth to Western civilization, or what we call Western civilization. So Platonic values are truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, love, compassion, joy, equanimity, and so that's the second characteristic of a religious experience, a spiritual experience. These days people say, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. It's fine, but we're not talking about religious dogma or ideology, the experience, which is universal. Finding your true self, immortal, timeless. 2 Platonic values, truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, love, compassion, joy, equanimity. And 3, loss of the fear of death. Why? Because you now know that you are deathless. Okay, and when you know you're deathless, there's no fear of death. Again, going back to the Vedanta and the Bhagavad Gita, when Lord Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, he says to Arjuna, your true self is deathless. Water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it. You are ancient, you are timeless, never born and never gone. Okay. So what is born and what is gone is a symbolic representation of your soul. Your mind and your body are symbolic representations of your soul, reflecting where you are in your spiritual evolution. And then your experience of the world is also the symbolic representation of your soul. So, in the 1970s, there was a book, very popular book. I think it sold millions of copies. It was called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. Sam, you're familiar with that, it seems. So there's one lazy man's guide to enlightenment. He says, whenever you're stressed, look around you and say, what am I doing in a state of awareness where this is real? What am I doing in a state of awareness where this is real? Because you'll understand that whatever is happening to you is a reflection of your state of awareness at all times. Your body, your emotions, your perception, your relationships, your professional interactions, everything that we call everyday reality is actually a symbolic representation of our state of awareness. Now, at other times, I've spoken about these states of awareness as they come to us from Adi Shankara. Okay, so the first state is what we call waking state, then the dream state, then the sleep state, then something called turiya, which is transcendental consciousness or soul consciousness, then something called turiya tata, which is cosmic consciousness, then something called bhagavad chetna, which is divine consciousness, and then something called brahmi chetna, which is freedom from liberation, and the choice to incarnate in any loka that you want, because there are infinite lokas. The word loka is a Sanskrit word, but it is related to the English word location, or the Latin word locus. So we are non-local beings having a local experience. Teilhard de Chardin, the great Christian theologian, said we are spiritual beings having a human experience. You can say we are infinite beings having a finite experience. But infinity remains infinity no matter what the finite experience is. Okay, so this is where the real reason I want to do this experiment is to convince everyone, not through knowledge only, but through experience, that if they know who their true self is, they don't have to fear anything, including death. And by the way, that's the primal fear. Every other fear is the fear of death in disguise. Every other fear is the fear of death in disguise. And what's the fear? Impermanence. But impermanence is not to you. Impermanence is to the symbolic representations of you, which is your body, your mind, and your experience of the universe. That's what impermanence refers to, the symbols of reality, not to reality. That's why we want to do this experiment. Having said that, science is our window to current perceived reality. We've been through all this. There was first, go to the most ancient mythologies, God created the universe. And, God represented as a dead white male with a long beard in the West. Okay, there's no dead white male there. Okay, and there's no dead white or dead black anything out there. Those are also symbols. Okay, when Jesus says, I and the Father are one, he's using a symbol, and he says, I and the Father are one, I am in you, you are in me. He's using symbolic language because also in the New Testament, if you've read it carefully, he says, before Abraham was, I am. So when he says in the Gospel of John, nobody goes to the kingdom of heaven except through me, go to the Aramaic, not to English translations written by people in the 16th century in England. Okay? Go to the original Aramaic and you will see he is referring to I am as the fundamental reality, which we are also referring to. Chidananda Rupam, Shivoham, Shivoham. That's what he's referring to. And even Moses, when he talks to the burning bush, it says, God, what's your name? God says, I am that I am. Okay, before I'm anything, before I'm Deepak, before I'm Sam, before I'm this computer, before I'm this chair, I am. Okay. So we're not talking about anything that's actually new, just coming to it in contemporary language. And today's contemporary language is science. And we've been through all these iterations, mythological iterations, religious, philosophical, theological. None of that. Only experience. The rest is philosophy. Even Buddhism, even Vedanta. If you don't have the experience, what good is it? Okay, so if you have the experience, then you have achieved what the Vedanta says. Knowledge that you know, but also knowledge that you become. And, this is why we're doing this experiment. So this experiment is going to have two things, very important. One is the objective, what is called the framework of science. So today's framework of science is objectivity. Okay, can I measure this? If I do this experiment and you do the same experiment, do we get the same results under the same conditions? Then how about everybody else? You do the same experiment, same protocol, you get the same results, we call it science. But let me tell you what the limitations of that scientific method is. First is, we all have to agree on the experiment. Secondly, we all have to agree with what is called the protocol, on what we are going to measure. Thirdly, we all have to agree that whatever experiment we do, there has to be someone to do the experiment, what we call the observer, the experimenter. What is the problem with this kind of science? Well, it's very useful. All the technology we have right now, this technology that people are watching us all over the world, is scientific method, right? And science has advanced from Newtonian physics in 500 years to special relativity first, and then general relativity, then quantum mechanics. Only in the last 100 years, only in the last 100 years have we now the science that gives us the technology to use the internet, Web 1.0, Web 2.0, Web 3.0, which is the metaverse, and I will talk a little bit about the metaverse. So we cannot argue that science is amazing in its predictive value of experiments. But science is also diabolical. Climate change is a result of science, reckless science. And so nuclear weapons, and so is biohacking, and all kinds of things, we are in trouble right now. But science can be also divine, so we use it for divine purposes. Here's the problem with current scientific methodology. Everybody agrees that in order to do science, you need a scientist. And we call that scientist an observer, the one who observes the experiments. The problem is, I go to every single conference in science, nobody can tell me what the observer is. So I say, who's the observer? I am the observer. Where are you? I'm here. Well, right there, we're off to a wrong start, because you're not here. This is your symbolic representation. So science never defines the observer, but yet depends on the observer. So that's why we need the scientific method, but then we need to go deep into the mystery of who or what the observer is. Because each of us is a mystery. And each of us is an infinite mystery. And that mystery is not in space-time. So while we are going to measure telomerase, this, that, the microbiome, so much interesting information on the microbiome now, you can change 99% of the genetic information in your body in about a few months just by changing your diet. Or you can start to change the genetic information in your body, or expression, I should say, of genetic information through vagal stimulation, or through breathing techniques, or through mind-body coordination, through yoga, or through anti-inflammatory processes, innumerable, or through stem cells. Right close by, we have a stem cell clinic here. We're going to collaborate with them. We're going to collaborate with people who make skin creams that trigger stem cell regeneration in the body. We're going to collaborate with, and I have permission to say this, with Beyond Meat as the official protein for this project. And I've been going around tasting all these meat substitutes. Some of them are so amazing, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And the technologies are amazing. Beyond Meat technology is amazing, because what they do is they look at the sequence of nucleotides on the genome. See, you're made of the same stuff as I'm made of, or a spider is made of, or a banana is made of. The only difference is the arrangement of the alphabet. So these guys figured out how to readjust the alphabet. Okay, do you want lamb? Okay, I'll take a piece of plant and create lamb for you. You want beef? Right now, the proteins in the world, major proteins are fish, lamb, chicken, beef. What else? Lobster, this, that, and we're done. There are trillions of proteins out there. Trillions! All can be made. So we are seeing a revolution in technology, and we're not going to ignore it, because technology is also part of human evolution. But never forget that technology itself is a symbolic representation of reality. So with that, I want to share with you that yes, we're going to collaborate with scientists, the best in the world, in terms of diet, skin care, no more wrinkles. See, I don't have any wrinkles. No more wrinkles, good muscle strength, all of that, which modern science says these are the biomarkers of aging. But we also need to understand that ultimately the solution is in consciousness. Okay? Given that, I want to share with you a little bit about what we're going to call adventures in the metaverse. Meta-human adventures in the metaverse. It'll come in a moment, but let me share with you a little prelude to how we get there, okay? So today, the major two questions in sciences, if you go Google, and I've said this before, don't believe me, check out for yourself, Wikipedia or Google. Two things are very interesting. One is the first question that scientists are looking to answer is what's the universe made of? And they can't give you an answer. And I won't give you details, but most of us think that the universe is made of atoms and particles and force fields and gravity and electromagnetism and strong and weak forces. By the way, that's less than 0.01% of the universe anyway. And those force fields and particles and atoms are also symbolic representations of what we call nothingness. So what's the universe made of? The best answer that scientists can give you, it's made of nothing, it's formless. So then the second question is, then if it is made of nothing, why does it look like this? Or this? Or this? Or anything I see? If it's made of nothing, why does it look like this? That's called the hard problem of consciousness. And I've spoken about this, and many other scientists are talking about this. We don't need to go into the hard problem of consciousness, other than to understand that everything you see, everything you experience is made out of nothing. Doesn't matter how you're experiencing it. So now, if I asked a scientist, or anyone, maybe not some of you, but what is this? You would say this is a chair. If I asked you what's this, you'd say this is a bottle of water. I asked you what's this? It's the phone. What is this? A hand. What is this? A body. That's a good answer, but it's not the true answer, okay? How do you know anything? How do you know this is a chair? How do you know this is a hand? How do you know this is a watch? Two reasons. One is you experience it. Okay. So to say or talk about anything, you have to be experiencing it, right? And without being aware, you can't be experiencing it. We can only experience that which we are aware of. Okay. And how do we become aware of anything? By experiencing it. I touch it. It makes sound. I can taste it. I'm now using the chair, but I could use my hand as the example. I'm seeing it, I'm touching it, I'm tasting it, I'm smelling it. I can make sounds with it. And then I say, as a result of all that, this is my hand. If you ask a scientist what this is made of, atoms, particles. What's this made of? Atoms, particles, and the bigger picture, force fields, gravity, all of that. But that's a model of reality. It's not reality. What is this made of? And the only answer is it's made of awareness. What is this made of? The only answer is it's made of awareness. If you were not aware, you don't know anything about this. Okay? So in one sutra, Lord Shiva solves the whole mystery of the hard problem of consciousness. And so do all the Kashmir non-dualists. They say, you and the universe are awareness. You and the universe are awareness. The Milky Way galaxy is awareness. This bottle is awareness. This chair is awareness. This phone is awareness. You would not know the existence of any of these symbolic representations unless you were aware that such a thing exists. And how do you know such a thing exists? Through the five senses. And how you interpret the five senses. How do you know anything exists? Through the five senses. That noise you're hearing outside, it exists because you're aware of it, right? And how are you aware? You're using one of the senses. And then you're interpreting it, and I still haven't figured out, is a lawnmower or an airplane or some machine out there. Doesn't matter. That would be the symbolic expression of what I'm hearing. And what am I hearing? Noise. Period. All sound is noise. Give meaning to a sound. Beethoven. Poetry. Music. The sentence, I love you. Before that, it's a noise. If I said I love you in Swahili, you wouldn't know what I'm talking about, right? So we have an agreement on what the symbols represent noise, or what symbols represent color. This is color. This is shape. This is form. The only difference between this and this is color, shape, and form. Without color, there's no shape, and without shape, there's no form. Shirt, pants, symbolic representation. So what is the universe made of? Awareness. What is your body made of? Awareness. What is your mind made of? Awareness. What are your emotions made of? Awareness. What are your relationships made of? Awareness. What are your professional interactions made of? Awareness. What is the world's business made of? Awareness. And each state of awareness represents its own symbolic representations. So as our state of awareness expands from limited to infinite, everything changes. So there's another expression that comes from the Vedanta. Maharishi used to say, reality is different in different states of consciousness. The brain is different in different states of consciousness. The mind is different in different states of consciousness. The emotions are different in different states of consciousness. The thinking is different in states of consciousness, and the biology is different in different states of consciousness. Whatever you're experiencing right now is representing your state of consciousness. That's why those 7 states are very crucial as our stepping stones, the ladder to ultimate reality. Given that, the raw material, if the universe and you are made of consciousness, how do we experience that consciousness? Because I said the 5 senses, that only applies to human 5 senses. A dog has same 5 senses, but a different bandwidth. So when let's say you call your dog Tommy, the dog doesn't hear the word Tommy. It hears something which you don't know. But now it's like playing virtual tennis. You know, I'm at a tennis court, I'm hitting a ball, my virtual ball. You are on the other side of the net, and you have your own virtual ball, which you interpret as my ball. So we are all living in this virtual reality. What we call the waking state is already a virtual reality. The metaverse extends that. So how do we use the raw material, which is 5 senses, human 5 senses, not mosquito 5 senses. We don't even know how many senses mosquitoes have, or what is the experience of an insect with 100 eyes. What's the experience of a bat that only knows echo of ultrasound, or a snake that navigates through infrared, or an owl sees at night. What the heck is going on? The answer is there's no physical world. Okay, what we call the physical world is a symbolic representation in human consciousness only of the 5 human senses. And that bandwidth of the human senses is less than 1% of reality. If I could see you as you really are, I'd see less. I'm seeing right now, what I'm seeing is less than 0.01% of who you are. Okay, so given that, how do we construct our reality? Now, please pay attention. We construct our reality through, first, our five senses: sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. That's called perception. Perception is a learned phenomenon. When you're born, you have no idea that this is a chair. Okay, all your experiences, colors, sounds, whatever. Okay, so all perception is a learned phenomenon. You're told this is a chair. Now, a long time ago, saw this experiment, won the Nobel Prize, by the way, where scientists put cats in a room that was only horizontal, and when they grew up, all they could see is a horizontal world. Another group of cats in a vertical world, when they grew up, all they can see is a vertical world. Is the world horizontal? Is the world vertical? It's infinite, formless. But you've been trained now, these little cats, so one group of cats cannot see furniture legs. Not because they don't exist, but because they cannot construct them in their perception. So perception is number one. And perception is a learned phenomenon. Agreed? Our perceptions are the five human senses. Second thing, the way we construct reality is we interpret our perceptions. So let's call that cognition. Second way we construct, first we learn to perceive, then we learn to interpret them, and then we say, oh, that's a chair, that's a star, that's a hand, that's a physical body. What happens after that? If we like what we're experiencing or dislike it, we generate emotions. That's the third way we construct our reality. Okay, perception, cognition, emotions. What's the fourth way? Memory. Once upon a time, I learned this was a chair. So if I have the memory of that construction, this is a chair. And memory is very fickle, you know, right? If I asked you, what were you doing yesterday at this time? What were you thinking? What are you feeling? Who knows? What will you be thinking tomorrow at this time? Impossible. What will you be thinking in the next 1 hour? Impossible. Okay? And yet we pay so much attention to what we're thinking and feeling right now, and our whole life goes by and we were never actually having the real experience. We were in a fickle memory or a future imagination. Okay? But that's how we construct reality. Perception, cognition, emotions, memory. What else? Sense of self. I am having this experience. But the sense of self is this body-mind, normally. Where are you? I'm here. Well, there's no one inside there that I can find. So where are you? And if I ask you, where are you? You say, I'm here. And I ask you, where am I? You say, you're there. This is a socially induced hallucination. Okay, so what's the next way we construct reality? Sense of self. Who am I? And then the last way we construct reality, there are many more ways, is what we call sense of agency. So normally the sense of agency, the world is happening to me. There's a world, it's happening to me. And who's me? This. There's another way of understanding. The world is not happening to you. You are creating the world, including body, mind, and experience of the world. So the construction of reality, once again, to summarize, is perceptions, cognition, emotion, memory, sense of self, and sense of agency. 6 things. If you understand these 6 things, you create your reality. But your perceived reality, not the ultimate reality, because ultimate reality is the source of all experience, not the experience. The experiences are in time, the source is not in time, and you are the source. For that, we use this expression, aham brahmasmi, I am the universe. So are you, tattvamasi. Given that, there is already some good research which I want to share with you, and very proud that this research is coming from the Chopra Foundation along with other scientists. And if it's not on our website, it will be. It's Non-Duality and Well-Being. Paul Mills has the paper published in peer-reviewed journals. And there are other researchers. What are we finding? That as people expand in their consciousness in the direction of their true self, they experience changes in these 6 areas. And I'm going to be short about this because this will be our course ultimately and more. So first thing is this change, have a shift in perception. What is the shift? Perception is in the present moment. Not filtered through anticipation, imagination, or memory. It's right now. This is the only perception you have right now. Everything else, you're imagining. And this too will be gone. It's part of the impermanence. So the research shows that perception is in the present moment, but also there's an understanding what I'm perceiving right now is my interpretation. And what others are perceiving is their interpretation. It represents their state of consciousness. Now, we could do 20 papers just on perception. We're not going to do them now. Second, there's a shift in cognition. And what is the shift in cognition? Quieter mind. So perception is not overloaded with the filter of the mind. No anticipation, no regrets, no resistance. Just this moment in its total clarity. Total clarity. So that's the second shift in perception, or cognition. Second. What was I going to see here? Something very beautiful that I just was thinking and it's gone. But yeah, you use thought when you need to use thought. And some of our meditations, we've tried this. Close your eyes and ask yourself, I wonder what my next thought will be. You can try it right now. I wonder what my next thought will be. You'll see it doesn't come when you wait for a thought. And the rest of the time you're so distracted by thought. Okay, so that's the second shift, cognition. The third shift is emotions. Okay, and what is that shift? A gradual shift from what we call divided emotions, which is fear, anger, hostility, resentments, grievances, guilt, shame, depression, in the direction of what? Love, compassion, joy, equanimity. What we call platonic emotions are also called by the Buddha divine emotions. Same thing. Okay. So there's a shift in emotions from the divided to the unified. But as a result, there's also less drama. Otherwise, our emotions are totally in the world of drama and melodrama, and that's, human beings. I mean, the first language was gossip, and today the language is still gossip. Everything else is by the way. Okay? And drama. Who's right, who's wrong, who's sinner, who's saint, who's divine, who's diabolical, who's sacred. Who cares? It just overshadows your own spirit. So that's the third shift. And by the way, research is showing that. These are called milestones. Okay? Milestones of spiritual evolution. What's the fourth shift? Memory. And this is also very interesting. First of all, no memory is accurate. In fact, there's no such thing as memory. Okay? When I remember something, that this is a chair, I reconstruct in the present moment the idea, cognition. I recognize what I learned. So if I asked you, Gloria, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Yeah, I'm asking. Huh? Coffee. So where was the memory of coffee before I asked her the question? By the way, this week, Monday, there'll be 5 articles on quantum biology that I'm writing with quantum biologists, and we can put them on the website, 5 articles. Because according to quantum biology, the arrow of time is reversible. Every equation goes both ways. So arrow of time shouldn't be just this way. So why are we only experiencing this arrow of time? Another misperception. Okay. This is very cutting edge science, by the way. So what is memory? There's no such thing. Before I ask you the question, what did you have for breakfast? There's no brain cell that said coffee. Okay. If I go inside your brain with a PET scan, positron emission tomography, I won't find some cells or some group of cells say, Gloria had coffee this morning for breakfast. In fact, it doesn't exist. What exists is a remnant, a trace of an experience, just like a footprint. Okay. Now, when a dog, for example, comes to the place where you're sitting now, and you leave this room, for the next few hours, if a dog came it would be smelling your feet and the imprint left in the present moment. Okay? So, once again, there's no such thing as memory. Everything we call memory is imagination. We are the imagination of ourselves. Okay? And what is represented as memory is a remnant or a trace of an experience, which in the Vedanta we call sanskara. Sanskara is the remnant of memory, which is also the remnant of imagination, which is also the remnant of desire. Without memory, there's no desire. Okay? Do you like chocolate ice cream? I love it. Why? Because you have a memory, right? A remnant. Do you like broccoli? I hate it. Why? Because there's a remnant of that. And both those are learned tastes, by the way. Broccoli and chocolate were learned phenomenon. If you were brought up on broccoli, you would resent chocolate. Or if you're brought up on both, you'd like both. Okay, so there's nothing significant about memory other than your attachment to it. So Lord Shiva says, I use memories, I do not allow memories to use me. When memories use you, you're a victim. When you use memories, you're a creator. And what the Hindus call reincarnation is the recycling of sanskara, imagination, memory. Sanskara, vasana. Vasana is the root, trace of memory now as imagination. And then karma. Karma is the recycling. Okay. They're all the same thing. Memory, and they're totally unreliable. And why are we going into this? Because we want to liberate ourselves from this karma. You know, and this planet Earth, by the way, in the Vedantists and even the Buddhists, they call it karma bhumi. Karma bhumi is we come here to exchange karma. And when we liberate ourselves from this karma, there are infinite lokas for you to upgrade your karma. So, you know, you can't get totally rid of karma because you can't get rid of the trace of memory. You cannot, the memory is not in the brain, or what the trace is not in the brain only actualizes it. So because it's consciousness, you can't get rid of it. And what is addiction? It's the extreme victimization by memory. The memory of pleasure, which is now pain. But the poor addict can't get out of it. Okay? So you can also say, recycling karma is addiction. There's no difference between addiction and karma. So that's the next marker, milestone. I use memories. I don't allow memories to use me. What's the next thing I mentioned? So I mentioned perception, cognition, emotions, memory, sense of self. Who am I? Not the body-mind, but the infinite awareness in which the body-mind is a changing experience. Once that happens, you're liberated, sense of self. And finally, sense of agency. Say, I am doing this. No, you're not. The universe is doing it through you. Okay? And the universe is doing it in infinite ways through you because we are all unique. And some of us in the first fight-flight response, some of us in the reactive response, some of us in the restful awareness response, some of us in the intuitive response, some of us in the creative response, some of us in the visionary response, and some of us in the sacred response. We're all creating different reality. So sense of agency changes from I am doing this to God or the universe or the infinite being is doing this through the filter of my mind. The mind outlives the body. The body cannot create the mind. This is Yoga Vaishishta. Okay? But the mind, which is the relic of experience, outlives the body, travels lokas or reincarnates, whatever. It's not part of the longevity experiment. We can do that some other time. But sense of agency shifts from I am doing this to the infinite through my karmic filter, and ultimately to what we call sankalpa, subtle intention, in formless awareness, and ultimately to what we call non-doing. Non-doing. Just thought of a very interesting story. First time I went to South Africa, and Indian gentleman, reminds me of Dilip, showed up to pick me up in a Rolls Royce. Okay, so I thought he was the chauffeur sent by Time Magazine because my trip was sponsored by Time Magazine. So I said, very nice to see you, and he addressed me very respectfully, sir, this, that, the other. I said, this Rolls Royce belongs to Time Magazine? He said, yes, and Time Magazine belongs to me. He was the owner of Time Magazine. And then he said, I said, tell me a little bit about yourself. You met this person, okay? Punacha knows who this person is. And I said, tell me a little bit. He says, there's nothing to say. 100 years ago, we were imported by the British as indentured workers. Now we run the country. They work for us. So, and he said it very humbly. I said, how did it all happen? He said, God. I surrendered. And that's the fifth, we have the niyamas. The fifth niyama is Ishwar Pranidhana, surrender to the divine, which means we don't do anything. It's God is doing it. Then why worry about anything? So sense of agency is the sixth. Now, if we can play with these 6 things that we just I mentioned, this is meta-human adventures in the metaverse. So now, because metaverse is becoming very popular, everybody's saying, what is metaverse? It's the awakened soul, meta-human, in what we call meta-reality, which is original reality, not symbolic reality. If we understand that, we're ready for meta-human adventures in the metaverse, and this longevity experiment is our playground. So I'll stop here, and I think we've given you a vision of the longevity experiment. Do we have time for anything else, or should we play the hymn?
Just a 2-minute meditation closing.
Okay,
Close it.
but do we have I gone beyond an hour? Because it won't take after an hour.
It's gone an hour. Should be okay.
Okay, so let's close our eyes. Perfect. It's less than 2 minutes, so bring your awareness to your heart. And we'll just stay with only 2 questions right now. They pertain to longevity. Okay, so first is, who am I? Ask yourself. Am I the changing body-mind and the changing universe? or am I the awareness? And the answer should be obvious to you. The second question is, what is my deepest aspiration for longevity, for myself and for those I love, and even for those whom I don't know? And just be aware of any sensations, any images, any feelings, any thoughts that may spontaneously come to you. What is my deepest aspiration for the longevity experiment, for myself, for those I love, and for all of life? Stay with that. Observing any sensations, any images, any feelings, any thoughts that may spontaneously come or not come. Live the questions, and life moves us into the answers. And whenever you're ready, you can please gently open your eyes. So we can play the hymn now.
मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कार चित्तानि नाहं न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्तपायु चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो मदोर्नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभाव न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्ष चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुनः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्य चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं